Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Elvon. Uh, well, good morning. As many of you know, we're going to be moving in mid-January or so. Actually, I guess if things go according to the plan, we'll do our first January 5th service in a new location, which we're keeping kind of secret because we just need to make sure that everything, all the I's are dotted and the T's crossed before we can reveal it to you. But because of that, of course, we formed this amazing decluttering team being led by Vivian Merck. I really appreciate it. And so we've been combing through all of the various rooms of the buildings and stuff. And one of the members of the decluttering team was starting to notice the energy of grief, coming up for people as we're going through all of these various items that we have in the building and the memories attached to them. And this woman wrote an amazing poem, which I'm going to have her come up and read, Kathy Arnold. Kathy, sent this to me back a couple weeks ago, and I thought, wow, I want to have everybody have a chance to hear this, because I think so many of us are dealing with this sort of emotion and maybe not quite have identified it. You're welcome.
Rev Bob knows I kind of went after him when I learned we were going to sell the building.
Well, a lot of people were really ticked off, and I can understand that. But,
So
but yeah, it's been unfolding in an amazing way.
So this is my process.
Yeah.
So I wrote this, and I shared it with a few people, and they said maybe to share it with everyone here. So I wrote, going forward in unity. I stand here gazing at my home, our home, that once was. I look back at the epicenter of my spiritual life, and I begin to panic. Soon I realize machinery will destroy all that I once knew and turn it into that which I no longer recognize, and I begin to panic. As each day passes, getting closer and closer to its demise, I wonder, was it all for naught? Was I lured into loving a place I must now relinquish? And I begin to panic. Where will I stand? Where will I place myself if I know not what I am standing within, no longer in recognition of my safe place? And I panic with every breath. I panic. I want to bring all that I know was my home with me. I desire to bring it all forward, to make my new place found safe and recognizable. I see the pictures, the illustrations that I lovingly study in my moments of quiet, reflective meditation. I glimpse the rug I now stand upon lovingly as I look around at all I know with familiarity. I am gripped with panic, knowing my intense need to bring it all forward so that I might find comfort in my new spiritual home. My fears are encompassing me. And in just that moment of fear, of loss, of confusion, I know not why, but I pause to catch a renewed breath to halt my panic. I grab onto myself from my escalating panic and fear, and I stop myself in suddenness, slowing my beating heart, catching my quivering breath. Now, for the first time, I take a second and glance around myself, and I see you and you and you, and I realize I had shut myself to all that made my place a retreat of unity. I am now awake and aware that I will be leaving nothing if you walk this journey along with me. With you, I will go forward, arm in arm. I know now I am not losing but gaining. Excitement is radiating within my very being because I know all that is important as I go forward is the we, is the us, is the unity of fellowship.
I have the same problem. There you go, okay.
I grab your hand in love because together we can go forward into the unknown of the known. It is now, in my here and now, I realize everything is as it should be. The road stretches before me, and I am excited to put my foot upon the path with you at my side, my kindred spirit, because there are no wrongs within our journey if we walk together in love and unity. At last, for the first time, I take a breath of clarity, of wonderment, of excitement, for I'm not losing or anything at all. I know now it wasn't the adornments or the books or the rugs. It was you. It was your handshake, your hug, your kind words, your caring, your very essence. And in that moment, I realized nothing will be lost. only gain tenfold. For if you walk this journey with me, I know that when we stumble, I will borrow strength from you and you from me. Together we will go forward with a renewed strength of purpose and a commitment to each other, to once more see each other, to know each other, to love one another. I am glimpsing a new restorative beginning, because you and you and you will be by my side. And once again, we will join together in unity of purpose, in unity of love, in unity of Tampa.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The other thing I realize is how, each of us are at different stages, that grieving process. And as I watched how much work the decluttering team has been doing and just been so grateful every step of the way, I was thinking about that earlier this week along with Labor Day, and especially being from Chicago where, this whole, where the whole movement, organized labor movement kind of got started, or at least jump-started there in Chicago. Labor Day became a holiday in 1894, and it was precipitated from about 5 years before that with the Haymarket Affair. If you don't know what the Haymarket Affair is, jump on Wikipedia and read about it. But it was a demonstration where workers, at the early years of the Industrial Revolution, were just exhausted because they had to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. So they wanted to cut it back to an 8-hour workday so they could at least have a couple hours with their family other than on Sunday. And that's how that all got started, the Haymarket Affair there in Chicago, where people who normally would just be hating each other and, different ethnic groups and all that all kind of came together and said, yeah, wait a minute here. We're human beings, we're organic, we're not cogs in a machine. So, and it reminded me of, I heard this economics professor from England back about 10 years ago, and he was talking about, how in the UK and here in the United States, our economy, he says we've got to remember that the economy isn't for stockholders to get rich. He says the three main tenets of a good, healthy economy are stability, prosperity, and contentment for everyone. And it's like, we don't have to be living in this age of materialism. Labor Day, of course, in recent years has become more of a marker of, the home stretch of the summer, and of course the launch of the political season. And I remember hearing a political consultant talk about, you don't do things over the summer, you wait until after Labor Day when people start to really pay attention to the news again. But so I chose as a lesson title today, Measuring Success. How do you measure success? From a spiritual perspective, I got to ask myself, why do I work? Why do we work? Now some people come up with answers like, well, I need to pay the bills. Yeah, but if that's the only reason you're working, there's not much satisfaction there, is there? In fact, each of us have been given spiritual gifts, passions, and talents for us to express in the world. It's the thing that when we do it, we just feel that enthusiasm because we're doing something we love or we're helping someone we love. It's a way of expressing our creativity. And we need to let go of that sentence that a lot of people use of what's in it for me. If we can shift out of that mentality to what's in it from me, suddenly we'll start to see that we're living a much more enriching life, and not just spiritually, but also in a material sense. Suddenly we're finding that, we have enough money to pay our bills. It's a consciousness of integrity. In short, it's about attitude. I know Carla and I, as a lot of you know, back in the 90s, traveled doing prosperity seminars at various churches and guest speaking on Sunday. We did here in January 1992. And we got to Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is up there in northeast Indiana. And we did, like we did at most places, did the Sunday service and then did a lesson in the afternoon, the prosperity, about a 3-hour seminar about the prosperity principles of unity. And we talked to a guy afterwards who had an epiphany. He worked at the General Motors plant in Fort Wayne. Now, the General Motors plant in Fort Wayne makes pickup trucks, the GM and Chevrolet pickup trucks. So one of the most popular vehicles, just total job security. You don't have to worry about, like they did up in Youngstown or Lordstown near Youngstown, there about the Chevy Cruze factory shutting down here a few months ago. But he was saying to me that how much he hated his job. He said, I would just go in there, and he says, when people would ask me why you're still there, I said, well, 5 more years I'll be vested in the pension. And he started realizing how much that heaviness had crept into all areas of his life. And it was just kind of like that V8, head slap moment, like, oh, wow, well, no wonder I'm exhausted all the time. And he started, so when we started talking about what he does, he said he takes part in building this pickup truck that some people use, as, of course, everyday transportation, but all of the businesses that depend upon these trucks. And that sense of like, wow, I'm really a part of something a lot bigger than myself physically in the world, but I'm also bigger than myself, something spiritually. I do things, so that everything that I do should be about spiritual growth. And it was a remarkable conversation that I had with him. Our attitude not only affects our own life, it affects what it is our occupation is or our vocation is. It affects the human race consciousness, which of course affects our nation, the world. So we need to ask ourselves as we go through each day, are we making a living or are we making a life? One of the prosperity principles that Carol and I taught was a divine purpose. What do you put here on the earth to do? Like with this gentleman that I was talking to in Fort Wayne, he not only changed his attitude about work, but then he looked at the things that he loved to do. And I said, try to incorporate those into your life, your hobbies or whatever, or volunteering. Just make sure that you do that, because whatever energy you put out is going to come back multiplied. Which is why when he was moping about his work, suddenly the whole world was moping about him. So it's easy to find a litany of reasons to not work or to kind of scale back on your work or just do enough to get by. But here again, whatever energy we put out is going to come back multiplied. It leads to boredom, it leads to frustration, and it chokes off the flow of spiritual vital energies. There is kind of an energy flow that comes through us, and if we fight it and resist it, then we become exhausted. Of course, I remember taking a basic electronics course in college, and the idea that the energy flows through, whatever the conductor is, the wire. But if you turn up the resistance, then the wire starts to get very hot, and less of the energy flows through past the resistance. So it's the resistance that causes us fatigue. Are we going with the flow? We often say here in Unity. So yeah, are we opening to that flow and allowing it to come? Starting in 2 weeks, I'm going to start a series on the creative process. Now, if you're wondering about the creative process, obviously come in 2 weeks and you'll start to learn about it. But in the Bible, a lot of you are familiar, at least with the first book of Genesis, and God said, let there be light, and on the first day, and on the second day, and on the third day, and on the fourth day. I'm going to talk about the symbolism of that and what it means. And over about an 8-week period, I'm going to give you these components. So start thinking about what it is you want to create in your own life. Think about what it is you want to create for a new location for Unity of Tampa. And like Kathy said, it's never been about the building. Unity of Tampa has been in many buildings, as we shared, when we made this decision to sell, back in November. And of course, the reason we're here is because the building we had over there, which is now the Unity of Tampa, University of Tampa campus, burned down. So yeah, sometimes we make the choice to make the change in our life, and sometimes God comes along with a spiritual 2x4, says you need to get out of there. So it's a good time to invite others, and also, of course, in about 2 weeks on Thursdays, we're going to start the book club on this wonderful novel about spirituality, the Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I know Sam Esther, who's a regular, he's a natural too, but he's a regular in the book club, had suggested that for this next book. So we're going to be going through that book this fall too on Thursdays. So let's talk about work. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "No matter what your work, let it be organic. Let it be in your bones, and you shall open the door by which affluence of heaven and earth will stream into you." Back in 1923, Khalil Gibran wrote a wonderful little booklet called The Prophet. Many people will take excerpts, and The Prophet speaks on all of these various topics. And in the chapter on work, Gibran wrote, "You work that you may keep pace with the earth in the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's procession that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. You may have been told that work is a curse and labor a misfortune, but I say to you that when you work, you fulfill a part of the earth's furthest dream, assigned to you when that dream was born. And in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's most innermost secret. And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your own heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and to reap the harvest of joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit of that harvest. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching you work. Work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it's better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and beg from those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds only half of a man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills a poison in the wine. And if you sing and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night. You know, I've been there, in some of those jobs where it's kind of like, I know before I came to work, before you guys hired me to start last January, I was working for this hotel, and there was this one very interesting personality who was the head of human resources and wreaking havoc on everybody's lives. And it was a challenge for me to keep centered every day as she would make her unreasonable demands of me and everybody else. But if we can, here again, like I mentioned last week, Mother Teresa saying, my work is to minister to Jesus Christ in all his various disguises. In Boston, there's a Boston Common. It was established in 1634 and is the oldest city park in the United States. It has a cemetery which is called the Burial Ground. And there are these really old tombstones. And of course, the way they used to make tombstones back in those days is a lot different, than now. But on one of them, it says, "Here lies Andrew Murray. He cobbled shoes to the glory of God for 40 years." So yeah, there is a difference when we're measuring success. A lot of the tenets of corporate success right now can get in the way of our personal growth. And yet, if we're willing to take the right attitude, and if we're willing to see that, every opportunity for spiritual growth, like I say, something comes into our life, it's unpleasant, say, okay, God, show me the good in this. If we take that attitude, we can have success in the corporate world. Many people desire affluence. And of course, the Bible has a few things to say about that. Of course, the 10 Commandments, 9 and 10, don't cover your neighbor's goods, don't cover your neighbor's wife. Gospel of Matthew, though, Jesus in chapter 16 says, "And for what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his life? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul?" Success. No one can put success in you. It has to be naturally drawn from within you and me. We can hear a motivational speaker, which might be able to activate our zeal faculty, but if we're really not embodying what it is that we do, then we choke off that flow of the vital energies. So fulfilling work comes from within. You can help draw the imprisoned splendor that's in each of us. There's a new model of success. Those of us who value, or those of us who find more important values rather than valuables. Instead of doing something at your expense, perhaps you can do something for your expanse. Can you cobble shoes to the glory of God for 40 years? And if you are not working right now, be willing to take that attitude of like, yes, I know I'm going to put away all of these negative ideas that people come up with about looking for work, and just know that, yeah, I'm going to find the right job. I'm going to spend, say, 4 hours a day, make sure that I'm focusing on finding that right job. And then find perhaps a way to volunteer, to actually be out there doing something, putting your energy out in the world, because whatever energy we put out is going to come back to us multiplied. So, Duncan, if you'll put up the slide of our takeaways, and of course I got, like, say, each week I'm printing these and putting them out there on the foyer. So, as you go through this week, why do I work? And rather than asking what's in it for me, what's in it from me? Am I making a living or am I making a life? Remember that resistance causes fatigue at work, and fulfilling work comes from within. Our closing story is a 3-minute video from Steve Hartman of the CBS Evening News.